Okay, on the Zenith chassis, I thought I'd show you where I am. I've replaced a whole bunch of caps. Well, I have replaced all of the paper and wax capacitors. Mostly I use these nice Panasonics. These do a really good job. I did put some new resistors in, but an awful lot of these resistors were well within spec. These dog bones here were remarkably good. I was really surprised. I did pull some dog bones out, but for the most part, the dog bones that are in there are good. And then there were a lot of these carbon comps, and every one of those have been testing out okay. Now, what I still have to do here is this electrolytic. There is a dog bone way down at the bottom. They're not usually bad on these Zeniths, but I'll check it like I always do. And if it's bad, well, I'll have to replace it. This big dog bone right here is good, this 15K. That's a good one. Most of the wires, surprisingly, this vintage of Zenith, the wires are always cracking and falling apart like this blue one is. The only wires in this whole chassis that are bad are the ones that lead out to the eye tube. And every one of those that I ever do, every Zenith I ever do with a tuning eye, the eye tube wires are bad. So I'm going to fix the eye tube wires up. And they're not even all of them bad. There's really just one of them, this blue one, that's coming apart. And then there's a gray one that is losing some insulation right at the end where it enters the socket for the eye tube. And the thing is, these wires are still really flexible. There is no reason to replace most of them. So I'm going to replace only this blue wire. No need to do the rest of them. And that should be good. I've got to clean up all the switches and all that jazz, but really making great progress on the bottom side of this chassis. This one here, this is a really simple can dome, just a 2-section can dome, and it's testing out okay. So I got no problems there. I do not replace these as a default thing. My going forward position is going to be, okay, check them really carefully. This one has two 6x5 rectifier tubes in it. And I've been given some suggestions on how to protect radios that use 6x5s. And I'm going to look at those suggestions and figure out which one I want to do. And then I'll go ahead and tell you what I've come up with. One of my subscribers, Kenneth, said I ought to put a fuse in the center tap in the secondary of this transformer just to take care of if I get a 6x5 cathode to heater short. And so I'm thinking I might do that. In the meantime, I'm just going to leave things as they are until I sort that one out. I installed a fuse on this radio. I do this to almost all the radios that I put together. And the reason I do this is that this radio, even though it's going to be electronically restored, still has 70-year-old parts in it. And any one of those 70-year-old parts can do what old things sometimes do, and that's fail. Even if it hasn't been used in a bad way, or if those parts haven't been subjected to any extreme conditions, just their age, just the deterioration of the materials they're made with can cause a failure. And if those parts fail, sometimes they can fail in a way that will bring down other parts with them. And so I install a fuse partly to make it better for the radio. If something fails and it starts pulling a lot of current, all of a sudden the fuse will take it out. So that's good for the radio. But also, sometimes it's also good for the safety of the owner and the owner's other property besides the radio. Because if something fails in this radio that causes a lot of heat and it starts a fire, well, that can be bad for everybody. So a fuse is a good idea. I know that it changes the look of this old radio. I understand that. But sometimes you have to say, well, it's worth changing the look a little bit to make the radio a better performing or safer radio. Now, what I like to do is I use these fuses here that have a vintage look to them. I think this kind is even still being manufactured, but these kind have been around since this radio was made. So this fuse here is actually not that period incorrect. And it's possible that somebody back in the 40s or 50s could have installed one of these things. So it's a good idea. This is all there is to it. And I don't know what they're really called, but I call them barrel fuses. And that's just because it looks like a barrel. You take the cap off and it's like a barrel inside. But it's real simple. You drill the appropriate size hole. And I usually drill a hole slightly smaller. And then I take a deburring tool, a little round deburring tool, and I enlarge the hole just big enough to fit this. And that way the hole is nice and smooth and perfectly round. They come with a star washer, and you can just see that star washer behind the nut there. If you look right down there, you can see that the nut has a little cutout that slides over this terminal right here. When you get these things new, this terminal will be folded down. You slide the nut over and you screw it on. The thing about these that you have to remember is as you look at those threads, those are plastic threads. So you don't want to grab your longest crescent wrench and start wrenching on this thing. All right, just tight enough to hold it in place is good. If you feel like it might loosen, then put it on, like that, just beyond finger tight, and then put a little bit of glue in those threads. That'll keep it from loosening. Besides, that star washer is designed to compress with even just beyond finger tight. So that this thing won't come loose if you do the right stuff. Then you lift that terminal up, and that's where you can attach your first wire. Now I bring in the line cord. On these Zeniths, the line cord comes in through 2 holes. You can see that right there. So you separate the line cord a little bit, and you bring it in and you attach it to the terminals here. The line cord comes in right here and attaches to this top terminal. The bottom terminal and the top terminal are connected together, so you connect the wire off to the fuse. And of course, the same idea on the other side, only that black wire is going directly into the transformer. So now you can take the other end of that fuse and go off to the switch, right? There it goes off to the switch, and of course returns back down to the transformer. That's all there is to it. It's really simple. It's a good way to help protect the radio, but mostly it's a good way to help protect the safety of either you, if it's your radio, or the person you're setting the radio up for. I consider it especially important if I'm doing someone else's radio, because they might not know as much about radios as you and I do, and they won't know if something's going wrong until way after it's too late. If it's someone else's radio, I always advise them, if the fuse blows once, sure, go ahead and replace it. If the fuse blows twice, a second time, pretty soon after that first time, then shut it down and don't turn the radio on again until someone sees it that knows about radios. And sometimes it's just an undersized fuse, which is rare because I'm pretty good at picking the right fuses. Sometimes it's a minor condition that can be fixed right away, but sometimes it's a major condition that needs some real attention, and that fuse saved them. You can see that, as usual, my little buddy has taken over my chair. I think I've said it in past videos. That chair really doesn't belong to me. That chair belongs to Fred. And you can see he's marking his territory. He's been marking his territory for a long time. Now he's getting bored, so he's going to start to explore. And I'm going to have to stop him before he tears something up. Now this radio uses 6X5s. And I'm going to also put a fuse, but under the chassis, in the center tap, in the center tap line of this radio as well. Each of these 6X5s is wired up as a half-wave rectifier. You can see that with the plates coupled together, this is essentially one big plate, which this becomes then a half-wave rectifier. And then this one down here behaves as like the second plate would in a normal wiring scheme to become another half-wave rectifier. So between the two of them, we have a full-wave rectifier that produces pulses like this. Okay, and those pulses are seen right here on the cathode of this full-wave rectifier. This can essentially be looked at as one big cathode. Now, if you get a cathode to ground short, a cathode to heater short on either side, on either half of this rectifier, you're going to have a direct current path to ground, and you'll see a real fast increase in current because of the high positive voltage here going straight to ground. Of course, the return path is this center tap for the secondary on the transformer. If I put a fuse right here, then if I see that sort of a fault, all right, I will see a huge increase in current in this path right here. It'll take that fuse out. And when I take that fuse out, it'll shut down this whole high voltage power supply and thus protect the various parts of the radio, like the field coil and the transformer itself. So that's why I want to put a fuse here. I don't do it on every radio because most radios do not have the tendency of that kind of fault, but the 6X5s do. And I think there are some other tubes like 6X4s and some that have that same problem. This came from a suggestion that one of my subscribers gave to me, a fellow named Kenneth, and there's his YouTube channel there. Kenneth leaves a lot of awesome comments that are really helpful to me because I'm a newbie. I'm learning just like most of us. And so he's been really helping me along. And this is one of those ideas he had. So if you've got a radio with rectifier tubes that are prone to this kind of problem, 6X5, I think the 6X4 is like that, then you want to think about doing this yourself. Looking at this black wire right here, okay, that's coming from the negative of the two electrolytic capacitors. And that comes down here and goes to a terminal down here. And then, of course, there's a wire that goes off to this transformer center tap from there. That's that sort of orange wire right there. Okay. I am going to disconnect that orange wire and put a pigtail fuse in line with it. In case we get a heater to cathode short, there will be an increase in current in that center tap, and it'll take that fuse out and shut the radio down, or at least shut the high voltage down. Okay, I'm about to put this cord back together with this plug here. But first, before I do that, I want to clean these prongs a little. This is the plug that was on the radio when he brought it to me. Now, this is not the original plug, okay? But if I put a replacement on it, it's not going to be original either. So I might as well use this. It's a perfectly good plug, and it looks cool. The idea here is just to remove corrosion. I'm not going to get it to look perfectly new, and I don't want to. I want to make it conduct well and get corrosion off of there. That's all. What I'm using is your garden variety stainless steel wire brush that you can get at Harbor Freight cheap. It's kind of tough to get inside here, but just do the best you can. That's when the flattened out sides works out pretty well. It helps. Now, another thing I sometimes will do to get inside, just use a little piece of sandpaper. I don't want to remove, if it's brass that's been plated, I don't want to remove the plating, so I want to be careful about it. I'm basically just trying to make it look and work the best it can. Okie dokie, there we go. All right, so I want to run the separated cord up through here. Sometimes there's enough of a lip inside of here that if I tie a small UL knot here, it'll be a good strain relief. But this one does not have a real good lip in here. See? So there's really nowhere to put that strain relief. So what I'm going to do is tie a knot once it's outside of here, and let's see if I can make that fit. I never was good at this UL knot thing, guys. I'm going to do the best I can. All right, so I think that goes through here, and this goes through there. If you want to learn how to tie UL knot, there's lots of people that are showing you how to do it on the internet. I'm terrible at it. See, that looks awful. That's not a UL knot. I never know which way to loop them. I don't know if I loop it this way. All right. Now, I come through there, through the backside. I think so. Wow, they look awful. Okay, that works. That will be a decent strain relief. Let's see if I can fit it whole now. That's the other problem with this kind of plug. I don't want to stress the cord putting it down in the hole either. There we go. That's going to be fine. I didn't pull it really hard and it fit down in there, but it's just big enough to not get into the deep hole. So it goes down into this little well inside the plug, but it doesn't really want to fit down into this hole down through here. So it makes a nice strain relief. You can pull on this and it won't pull on the terminations at the screws. So that's great. That's what I want. Now I got just enough wire to get around the screws. So let me strip it back. You just want to tin the wire. It helps prevent corrosion of the copper and all that. Just put a little bit of soldering paste flux on there. I promised a couple people I was going to try some liquid flux this weekend, and here it is Sunday, and I haven't done it yet. So I'll probably still try to give it a shot. The idea I like the idea a lot. All right, where's the solder? I'm going to build a solder dispensing tool so that I can hang it or something and always have solder there available. If I leave it laying around too much, the cats want to play with it. There we go. There we go. Okay. Then you just sort of tuck that wire down in there. Piece of cake. There's a little cutout right here to fit that wire in place. And I conform it to where the screw will hold it down. Now everybody has their own way, and no way is probably better, or most ways are probably not better than other ways, so you do your way. I'm sort of like John from Arkansas. My whole point here is not to show off how smart I am to the experts, because we all know that I'm a relative newbie and I'm not that smart. My whole thing is to show people that have no idea that, hey, this is one way you can try it. That's what I'm all about. And John from Arkansas inspired me in that sort of direction because that's what his channel always did. And I always respected that. I like my grabber screwdriver, man. I got to find another one. Someday this thing will break and then I won't have one if I don't get one. There we go. Okay. Nice and neat. And, you know, some people, or some of these had these little cardboard inserts that cover this. I've talked about this in the past. It's nice, but they always fall off. This one has these prongs are designed to kind of hold it in place. But I don't have a stash of those. I don't know where I would get them. And making them, I've tried that. It doesn't work out. They never look right. So I just leave it be. It's not unsafe because you can't touch that unless you unplug this. So there you go. Okay, it's ready to be plugged in. By the way, this is how I generally buy my line cord. If I'm just doing radio where they don't need the reproduction cloth stuff, I buy this. And of course, I've got this on Amazon as well. And I might have shown this before in an older video, but just check it out. Here's what it says on the label. 18.2, which is 18 gauge 2 conductor lamp cord. And I buy it 250 feet at a time. It lasts me a long time, and it's real nice, and it doesn't cost a bunch. It's a whole lot cheaper than buying the cord, you know, 5 or 6 or 10 feet at a time. Now, 18 gauge is plenty sufficient for just about every radio I've ever done. That's all that's inside the reproduction cloth cord, by the way. So it's the same idea. A couple people have suggested buying, brown extension cords at Walmart, the dollar ones, I think they're like, $2, and then cutting off the socket, the receptacle end. That's a great idea, except then I have to make, number one, I have to make trips to Walmart, which I hate to do. I hate it. And then number two, our Walmart never seems to have the brown ones. They have white and they have black and sometimes green, but I never find brown ones. So that's a real hassle. So this to me, if I'm paying a little more per foot with this than the Walmart stuff, this stuff here to me works better. I like it better, and it's easier for me to have on hand all the time because I just buy it in quantity. I usually buy a couple of these at a time, and I don't have to buy them but maybe once or twice a year. And by the way, there's one other difference between this and the stuff made in Walmart. Let me see if I can get you to see that. See that right there? Yeah. Okay, you know what I have to say. I don't really need to say it. So it's made in USA. That's a big deal to me. And to me, it's worth it even if I pay just a little more. This is nice, new cord, very flexible, looks perfect in this radio. Well, he finally got tired of tearing stuff up and decided to take a nap. He'll be there for a few hours now. I guess I don't get to use that chair even as a borrower. Okay, here's the power supply circuit as it is right now. As I always do, I put a fuse in the line coming in, and I always put it before the switch, although it doesn't matter where it goes really, as long as it's in the circuit. All right, so that is F1. There is the switch on the volume control. That's the original switch. And then F2 is this fuse that I put in the center tap, the main power transformer center tap. I haven't yet determined what the value of that fuse will be. I've just got to do a little math, and I have to make sure I understand exactly what it should be because I'm not sure yet. I've never done this before. So I'll do that math and then I'll fill this in. And of course, I made a note of it on the schematic parts list too. F1 is that line fuse, 1.5 amp. Sometimes I get away with 1 amp, but this is a 10 tube radio, and so I think I'll stick with the 1.5 on this guy. And of course, there's that main power transformer center tap fuse. While I am looking at this schematic, all the wiring is pretty much highlighted as done. Everything in yellow was checked and or replaced. So we'll get on with the top side here soon. Okay, I want to show you that F2 fuse that I put in the main power transformer circuit. There it is right there. It's under the chassis because it's not the kind of fuse you really want people messing with. Besides, there will be high voltage on that fuse. The purple wires are, I picked purple on purpose. Obviously, it's a color, this color you're not going to see anywhere else in the radio. So I needed to be able to quickly identify those, that circuit, that modified circuit. So what we have here is this orange wire right here is coming from the main power transformer. That's the center tap wire. It is connected to one side of the fuse right over there. The other side of the fuse is connected via this terminal switch to the where the same location that the negative for the electrolytics is connected. Basically the B- of the radio. So what we have here is basically the center tap wire used to go right here. Instead, now it goes through the fuse first. No big deal. That's all there is to it, guys. Oh yeah, and I forgot to point out that I put a 0.0047 microfarad safety cap in there, a Y2 safety cap. So I think this power supply is finally good to go. Alrighty guys, this is as good a time as any to stop. We're going to talk about the tuning eye socket next time, and that's going to take a few minutes. So we'll wrap this video up for today. And it's a Thursday morning, August the 24th. My gosh, we're almost through August. And so from your Western Outpost in Salt Lake City, this is Michael. And that's all for now.